This is a Super Famicom, the Japanese version of the Super Nintendo. Well, it's actually the other way around because this came first, but yeah. I got this console from Japan since a friend of mine went there and he brought me this untested loose console from Unheard Of, which is a Japanese thrift shop chain, and they were selling this for just 500 yen, which is about $4.66 right now. Now, I know that buying a used console without any warranty, without any cables, untested, sounds like a bad idea, but for less than $5 you can't really go wrong. I did also want to buy either a Japanese Super Famicom or an American Super Nintendo because PAL ones that are sold here in Europe have the dreaded 50Hz problem where games are slowed down because they didn't really take the proper time to convert the games to our format. So I got the console here and it's actually in pretty good condition, which is great for the price I paid. It has some scratches, but they are some really light ones, so I'm not really worried about them. And it's a bit yellowed, not too much, but I'm going to clean and retrobrite this, so that's not really much of a problem at all. Now, what we have to do right now is actually test the console, because we don't know if this works or not. And to do that, we need a video cable, which I do have since the SNES video cable is actually identical to the Nintendo 64 and GameCube one. And I do own both of these consoles, so I do have cables for them. And for the power supply, I could have went for a original Japanese one, but it was a pain to import. It needed some adapters, so I just went and bought a generic one from eBay that had the right specs. What is kind of funny is that I paid more for the power supply than what I paid for the console, but that's what you get, I think. So the only thing that we are missing now to test the console is a game, and here it is, Donkey Kong Country Japanese version, which is called Super Donkey Kong for some reason. This was just 100 yen, which is less than $1, so I did definitely get a good deal on this. So I finally hooked everything up, and it's working indeed, but I noticed a slight problem which kind of worried me. The console had this red tint all over the screen, which basically made every color seem more leaning to red than it should, so I connected the console to a LCD TV and it was showing a garbled image, which was more worrying. So I connected it to another TV again and it now was black and white. I was starting to worry about what the hell was happening, but then I realized that I was trying to connect this NTSC console to PAL TVs, which is a bad idea since they don't really know how to handle the signal. So I finally hooked it up to another TV yet, which I own, that has support for both PAL and NTSC, and finally the colors were showing correctly and the image was glorious. Okay, so we now know that the console works, but we still need a controller to actually play it or even just do stuff with it. So I went on eBay and bought one, and I also bought two Japanese games, Super Mario World and Super Mario All-Stars, and they should be here in 2 weeks, so let's skip to when they arrive.
2 weeks later.
So after 14 days the order came in and it was super well packed, but I had already bought from this seller and I knew they were reliable, and we now have a complete Super Famicom that we can test. So let's just put the cartridge in and... well, I think we need some old-fashioned maintenance here, so let's just... and see if it works now. Yeah, it's working. Perfect. The controller seems to be working fine. The Super Mario World cartridge works alright, so yeah, I think everything here is just working perfectly. The day after, I plugged in the console to my bedroom Samsung LCD TV because I wanted to play some Super Mario World, and it was working fine without any problems. One thing that I noticed was that when playing Super Mario All-Stars, which is a game I know perfectly because I even own it for Wii, sometimes the buttons were not responding perfectly, like sometimes they were missing some hits. So what I think was causing this was actually dirt inside the controller, because after using it for a while, the problem went away. But just to be safe, I decided to disassemble the controller, which is pretty straightforward. You just need a Phillips head screwdriver. If you don't feel safe doing this without guides, I will link the iFixit guide for it in the description. Anyway, what I did was pretty straightforward. I took every single plastic and rubber part and I tried cleaning them as best as I could, and I let them sink in water for around 30 minutes, and this actually made a big difference on how the controller felt, which is actually pretty obvious if you think this controller is from 1992 and hasn't been ever opened. So yeah, I will suggest doing this to every single old controller you get, because they get lots of dirt and stuff in them, and cleaning them just makes them feel a lot better. I also did this with my GameCube controller around a year ago, and it really feels a lot better. So at the end, I have to say this console was actually a pretty good deal. I spent more for the controller and the power supply than for the console itself, but that was because I wanted a official controller, not a third-party one, and I wanted a power supply that came from Europe because I wanted to test the console fast and not wait 2 months for it to arrive. I spent around $35 total for the console, the controller and the power supply, but I could have spent as little as $15 total if I had bought a third-party controller and the power supply from China and just waited. So this is potentially a really good bargain if you just want the SNES as cheap as possible and you can wait for a bit. Was all of this worth it? Well, yes, living in Europe, this was basically the best and cheapest way to get a proper NTSC SNES and play games at the correct speed. It was also way cheaper than buying a PAL SNES, which usually goes for $60 or more here. Buying from Ardoff is indeed a risk, but most of the consoles and games there, even though they are untested, outright work fine or just need some good cleaning. In my case, the console is in great condition, and the only thing I now have left to do is cleaning the insides and retrobrighting it to remove the yellowing on the plastic, which I'm gonna show you in another dedicated video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to publish more retro gaming and restoration videos in this channel, so stay tuned for them. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching and see you soon in the next video.